rhythms blend, we're gonna thrive. Go, 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 oh, shout it out loud. In the summer sun, we're a summer-loving crowd. Talking Brazil ball, we're breaking it down.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Talking Brazil Ball. We're here to deliver the latest of the week in Brazilian football. There's been a lot to get into. I'm here once again, joined by my co-host, George. How are you today, George?
Yeah, okay, James, thank you. A bit of technical issues here, haven't we? This is the second time we've tried it, but what I must say to you, James, is como va. I've been learning a bit of Portuguese.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've not learned that much from. You've got a second chance here, like George says. We tried a first take there of the pod. It didn't quite get off. Didn't quite launch very well. So, yeah, I'm okay. I still can't answer your question though. But I know you know another word, don't you, that you can say?
Well, you were teaching me, so yeah, like you said, got a second chance, which is obrigado.
Yeah, you still messed it up on the second. There's no L. I don't know where you're getting that L from. It's obrigado.
Obrigado.
Obrigada, yeah.
Obrigado.
There you go, obrigado.
Well, yeah, there you go. I mean, I've got a little bit more later on in the pod, if you like, James, as well. So mix it in.
That'll be exciting for everybody, I'm sure. But yeah, we must say obrigado or obrigada even to our new listeners, George. We seem to have hit a bit of a nerve on the last episode that we put out there. We seem to be getting quite a few views and listens from our friends up in Fortaleza over in the north of Brazil. So we were shining a light on their team's kind of excellent season so far. So yeah, thank you to everybody who listened, and we're really pleased that it's been able to reach you over there in South America, and we're pleased to report on all the goings on at Fortaleza. They've had a wonderful start to the season, and yeah, thank you so much for listening. All your feedback. I know you've been interacting with some of the new listeners, haven't you, George? In all your Portuguese. I wonder if you've been conversing which language. I wonder.
Well, none of that just yet, but I'm all here for it. And like you said, any new listeners, yeah, it was great to see that we've branched out into Brazil and got a few followers that of course, Fortaleza fans, and it was excellent, James, to interact with a few people. And we probably won't touch on Fortaleza too much here, but I'm sure hopefully you guys are listening. Nevertheless, we will. I'm sure touch on them in some way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, not one of our focused games this week, but I'm sure again, we will mention them a little bit. So yeah, thank you to everybody who did listen, and to the usual listeners, of course, who are stuck with us right from the start. And we hopefully can keep growing and spreading the word out to people. But like we said, George, there was another kind of round of fixtures, big results. Like we said last week, there was a few really big games, big derby games. So do you just want to run through the results of those just to get everybody up to date with what's been going on?
Yeah, as always, James, it would be a pleasure of mine to get going with the fixture. So it started, James, the game week on Saturday, the 10th of August. Fortaleza, our new followers will be celebrating a 1-0 win over Cuiaba. Also on Saturday, Cuiaba 1, Grêmio 3. Into Sunday then, August 11th, Corinthians 1, Red Bull Bragantino 1. Cruzeiro 0, Galo 0, Vasco 2, Fluminense 0, Juventude 3, Botafogo 2, Bahia 2, Vitória 0, Flamengo 1, Palmeiras 1, Sao Paulo 1, Gio 0, and Inter 2, Paranense 2.
Yep. So everybody. So some big results there. Like you said, Fortaleza fans once again celebrating up to second in the table now for them. So again, George, we picked our games of the week last week. They kind of picked themselves in many ways, but unfortunately, once again, you've been landed with a little bit of a kind of a dead duck. You were covering the Belo Horizonte derby, so obviously a big one for you in some ways. We'll cover your game first again because I don't think there was all that much to say, was it? You were saying so. Cruzeiro 0, Atletico Mineiro 0 as well. What happened in this one? What did you take away from it? Maybe a decent point in the end for both of them, all things considered, or maybe one of them where nobody really is satisfied.
And look, I think probably both are sort of satisfied, James, with a 0-0 draw. I think as the game played out, maybe Cruzeiro were the happier of the two. In the end, Galo had a heck of a chunk of the possession, more shots, 12 shots to Cruzeiro's 6. Cruzeiro only had one shot on target in the whole game, James. So I think from those, you've got to say maybe Cruzeiro had, probably would come out of it the happier of the two teams. We know Galo, I think, generally have a little bit of the edge on Cruzeiro in this derby game. So I'd say Cruzeiro probably happier. I think Galo not too dissatisfied with the point in the end, given that they're, going so poorly, really, James, you have to say, in the league. They're not on such bad form, but it's just not going quite Milito's way, I don't think. And they've got a Libertadores game on Wednesday against San Lorenzo in Argentina. It's the last 16 of the Libertadores, so hopefully they're going to get a win there and get them on the way to the quarterfinals. But yeah, for this game, just one of them forget it kind of games. There wasn't much even in terms of chances. Like I said, I think Galo had the better of the play, but in all honesty, I think it was a bit of a drab game, bit of a drab affair, really. And it's funny, obviously it's a derby game, James. Tensions are quite high, perhaps. And, some of and in particular the Galo players, we're getting the Cruzeiro fans riled up, I think. And you've spoken about this man before, Arana, who's a wing back for Galo. I think he was stirring the pot in the last derby game earlier on in the season. Goal here, Arana. He was doing the crying. He loves the crying faces to the Cruzeiro fans as he was coming off the pitch. There was also new signing, James, from Cuiaba, who we spoke about last week, Davison, and he was winding up the fans as well. There was a quote somewhere, him saying that basically, he was asked how his debut went. In paraphrasing it, he kind of said, well, it would have been better if there was some sort of crowd there. He was digging at the Cruzeiro fans, saying it basically was quiet. He couldn't hear anything, so he said it would have been better if there was some noise about. Bear in mind there was 60-odd thousand people there, James. So he was obviously having a bit of a dig at Cruzeiro. But all in all, it was a bit of a poor affair. One thing to note, James, I know you like your shirts and things, and this such thing, and in particular the badges on the shirts, on the side of the shirts. We know Brazil have a play with these sort of things, and there was a badge on the side of the Galo shirt in this one, and this was homage to one of their old archbishops, Serafin Fernandez de Arejo, who would have turned 100, James, on Tuesday, on the 13th of August. And there was a homage to him on the side of the Galo shirt for this one. Go and have a look at it after this. It was quite a fancy one, of little portrait of the Archbishop. He was the Archbishop of Belo Horizonte, and I think he was something to do with Galo as well. Mm-hmm. So, but all in all, bit of a poor game, to be honest.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, Davison had hastened to say perhaps his debut would have been better if they'd have managed to beat Cruzeiro as well. I mean, it's all well and good, kind of all this big talk. And like you say, Guilherme Arana did have quite a big kind of a go at Cruzeiro, which is fine. But Cruzeiro are ahead of them in the table, and not kind of just by a bit. They're 7 points ahead of them. Galo have got a game in hand. But, Cruzeiro are the team in Belo Horizonte at the moment highest up the table. So I'd kind of, I'd suggest that they perhaps keep their mouth shut a little on that. Really, if you haven't been able to go and beat them, then I don't think you've got too much in the way of kind of talking big. But anyway, they're each to their own. In there, and Davison maybe will have ingratiated himself to his new fans with that. Perhaps that was his aim, really. But well, George, I know
like you said, James. Sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say that I know you've been kind of suggesting that Milito's on the edge for a few weeks. What do you think? Do you think he's got a bit more time or what?
Well, look, James, they're sitting in 9th position now. I was going to say that they're actually 7 points adrift of Cruzeiro now. They do have a game in hand, but they're slipping down the table in terms of where Cruzeiro are in 6th. I think the Libertadores is key for this, James, to be honest with you. If they can get through and get to the latter stages, maybe even win it, who knows? That will save Milito's job. I think as soon as they go out, particularly if they lose this tie over 2 legs, obviously against San Lorenzo, I think he's gone. I think the league is pretty much done in terms of winning it, definitely. I mean, they're 14 points behind Botafogo with 2 games in hand. It should be said, but it's not good enough. And I think they'll pin it all on the Libertadores for me. And if they don't do well in this, I think he's gone.
Yeah, that could well be the case. We'll have to wait and see. In this game in particular, anything else to note from it, George? Like you said, 0-0. I think it was your second 0-0 in a row, possibly. Anything else to add just before we move on to the other big game of the week?
I think I had a 1-0 last week, James,
Oh,
potentially.
was it 1-0?
Yeah. But yeah, I don't seem to, it was Vitória Cuiaba, but I don't get many goals in my games. And to be honest with you, there isn't much more to know off this game. In Cruzeiro, doing all right. The home form, I know they got beat by Fortaleza last time out, but the home form still stands up. They'll be proud of that. But yeah, they've got Boca Juniors actually in the Sudamericana. It's quite an interesting looking game on Friday morning, so we'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, nothing more to say, James.
Yeah, that is a big game. Boca obviously not quite the force they were, although they did, of course, make the Libertadores final last year. So we'll see how they get on there. So moving along then, I had a big game, obviously not quite a derby, but still a big rivalry in terms of Flamengo against Palmeiras. So a big game at the top of the table, obviously. Both teams have kind of been in a bit of stuttering form heading into this, and Flamengo did actually knock Palmeiras out of the Copa do Brasil in midweek as well, although Palmeiras, I think, got a 1-1 draw in the second leg. They beat them in the second leg, but it wasn't enough. They did lose the first leg 2-0. So I think Vitor Rice, our friend, the youngster, might have got the winner actually in that one midweek. But yeah, it wasn't enough to turn over the result. Yeah, he did, Vitor Rice. It wasn't enough to turn it over. Flamengo went through. So Flamengo had the tails up a little more than Palmeiras. They were in real difficult form heading into this game. But, I think one of those, similar to your game, really, nobody really leaves with any satisfaction. It was a 1-1 draw in the end. Palmeiras probably, leave the happy of the two teams, given that they were away from home, and also given that their equaliser came with just 3 minutes left, and also given that they were, in really poor form, and that another loss would have probably seen them, I'd have thought, just about out of the title race. But by all accounts, it was a much better performance from Palmeiras. They've not been competitive in recent weeks, and I think they were back to their old selves a little bit. So the story of the game, basically, well, if you ask Abel Ferreira, I think the story of the game was that Palmeiras had a goal disallowed in the first half with the scores at 0-0. Very tight call, I think it was, an offside call, denied them to go into the lead at the Maracanã, and then Georgia Araceta scored soon after half-time, bit of a bundled, kind of scrappy goal, and then a young man who we're going to talk a little bit about, Luigi, got the equaliser just before time. But like I said, the story of the game probably hinged on that offside. I mean, certainly if you ask the Palmeiras manager, he was furious after the game, George. I haven't seen it back, to be honest. I've seen the goal. I haven't seen the minuscule, the lines that VAR draw on it. But he actually said he was pissed off with VAR after the game, and he actually had this to say, which talks a bit of a conspiracy against Palmeiras. I know that everyone wants Palmeiras to enter crisis. For plenty of years, we've been selling players for big money, winning titles, and that bothers people. He says so. He reckons that people are out to get Palmeiras, which, when managers start talking about conspiracies, I don't think that's ever a good sign, to be quite honest. But either way, he clearly wasn't happy with the way that the game went. And he said he actually doesn't trust or believe the lines that VAR drew on the screen for the offside, which is quite a thing to say, really. But in the end, a point apiece. It's not especially exciting, and it probably shows where both teams are here. Not quite on form, not quite, the best of themselves. And I think Tite, on the other hand, was a bit more happy with the point. But yeah, George, I don't know what you made of the result. I just want to talk a little about Luigi, the man who did get the equaliser. But was there anything you wanted to know? I know you like Flamengo, don't you? You're a fan of Tite. Things have been going reasonably well for them so far, but they have kind of stuttered a little, but they are very much still within touching distance.
Yeah, Flamengo, obviously perennial, doing well, aren't they? We know they're going to be at the top of the league. Dropped off a couple of games, lost to Sao Paulo, draw with Palmeiras. It's a bit frustrating given that the other teams are dropping points around them. I know Fortaleza were doing so well, but Botafogo lost. Palmeiras, like you said, James, rightly so, aren't having the sparkling season we're probably used to them having. And I think it's quite refreshing, James, to hear a manager speak so honestly about his thoughts, but it's probably not advised because he'll probably get some kind of fine or a ban, won't he, after these comments? And he's obviously not happy. I think as well, I agree with you. I think he's nearing to the end of his tenure here because when he's starting to think about conspiracy theories against his team, which isn't there, in all honesty, it's not a happy place, I don't think, really, to be. So, but in terms of Flamengo, just need to keep ticking on. They're only 2 points away with a game in hand off the top. So I think they'll be the more happier with this, even though they did give up the lead late on.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get. Tite seemed reasonably happy. I think probably it reflects that the pressure is perhaps less on Tite than it is on Ferreira. Obviously, he's only just through the door at Flamengo, really, and doing a decent job. They've got Bolivar in the Copa Libertadores midweek, so you'd have to make them favourites for that one, really. And as for Palmeiras, they've got Botafogo, so a domestic kind of a double header in the Libertadores, which is never easy for any team, whatever country you're from, really. To play a rival from the domestic league is not ideal, really. So that won't be easy. Obviously, a big game's coming up for them. But yeah, I want to talk about Luigi. So last week we saw quite a big kind of week from the young players, didn't we? And it's been a similar story this week. So we have got a number of young players to look at. And Luigi, I'll reveal it now. He hasn't won the Young Player of the Round, which is why I just wanted to touch on him. But he had to be in the running. He came on quite late on in the game, and he's ended up getting the equaliser with just 3 minutes to go. He's got 21 goals in 22 for the under 17s last year, George. So he's a player who's very much been on the radar at Palmeiras. They apparently refer to him as the $1 billion generation. And this is including the likes of Endrick, obviously, Luis Guilherme, who's gone to West Ham, Estevao, who we know is lined up for a move to Chelsea, and Victor Reis as well, who is attracted interest from Real Madrid, as we saw earlier this week as well, George. So he's very much seen as part of that generation, the $1 billion generation, they call them within Palmeiras. So as for this goal itself, it was he couldn't have missed, really, when it did eventually land to him, but he was in and around it. He gobbled up a kind of a rebound off the goalkeeper and headed it into kind of the net from about a yard out. So another player who's come onto our radar for us kind of out of nowhere, but it seems as though he's been kind of bubbling under for a little while. But yeah, he's very much one to watch. Luigi, they call him, which is a good name. So we'll have to keep an eye and see how he gets on.
Yeah, absolutely, James. Like you said, it's excuse me, another one off the conveyor belt from Palmeiras, and yeah, they just keep churning them out, don't they? And they're not afraid, like we said so many, it's not just Palmeiras, but any of the Brazilian teams, they're not afraid to give these players a go. We'll talk about young players. I know there's a 16-year-old lad we're going to touch on, aren't we? And speak about, a bit later on with the young players. So they're not afraid to give these boys a chance, and it's good to see, and fair play to him. It wasn't a hard goal to score, let's be honest. I could have probably scored that one, James, but, well, maybe not actually. We'll probably found a way to miss it somehow, but, it wasn't a hard one, was it? But it's getting the goal, it's getting yourself in there, and fair play to him. Well done to him.
Yeah, for sure. One to keep an eye on. But in terms of Palmeiras more generally, they obviously got a late equaliser against Inter, I think, the other week. No, was it the other way around? I can't remember. Either way, they're 4 without a win now, Palmeiras, so they're not, they are stumbling. They're in 4th still, the 5 points off the top, so they were lucky in the sense that Botafogo did lose. Otherwise, there was a bit of a gap opening up there, so they managed to claw one back on them. As for Flamengo, they're in 3rd, so 2 points below Botafogo. They are 3 ahead of Palmeiras with a game in hand. So there is a slight gap opening up in terms of a top 3, really, and then the rest is slowly behind. This was a chance for Palmeiras to make that back up. They couldn't take it. So I think they'll be disappointed, but ultimately there were signs of improvement for them. And yeah, for Flamengo, Tite more happy, although I would suggest that perhaps he shouldn't be in a way. But one thing to note, George, I know you like these little bits of trivia. I don't know if you've been watching the Olympics at all. I mean, I haven't really been keeping up to date with it, but I know there's been some, it's obviously been a big story globally, hasn't it? I don't know if you've been keeping on top of things there.
No, not at all, really, James. I watched the opening ceremony. I think I've watched odd bits in the first few days, and then it's just finished, obviously, yesterday as of recording. So it's done now, and yeah, I barely watched a thing, to be fair.
Yeah, well, I didn't, but the Flamengo fans seem to have been enjoying it because there was a tribute to Rebecca Andrade, who has won 4 medals in Paris. I think 1 gold, a couple of silvers. I think she won the gymnastics potentially, and she is actually a Flamengo athlete. So I think she's part of the club, part of its athletics club. So the fans had a big tribute to her, big flag, black and red, obviously, in the stands. So that was a nice kind of touch. Obviously, we're not used to these things in the UK. Our clubs are very much just football clubs, but in Brazil, it's not the case. I know in Spain and places like that, they tend to have other sports on the kind of the agenda. And Flamengo is one of those. So yeah, a big tribute to Rebecca Andrade, and they were very pleased with her. Unfortunately, they couldn't get the win at the Maracanã for her, but a point apiece will have been taken, and they'll move on to those midweek games and see how they can get on. But let's move on, Josh, from 2 games which promised a lot, really, which didn't really deliver. I mean, we should know by now that these big games do have a tendency just to fall a little bit flat. It's the same wherever you are in the world. But let's move on to the awards and the play of the round, because there were a couple of interesting games elsewhere. And we did big this fella up last week, and he came very, very good for us. Martin Braithwaite, the Grêmio striker, new Grêmio striker. I mean, how often have we seen these players come to Brazil and fall flat as soon as they get there? Injuries, inability to adapt, that kind of thing. But George, we gave Braithwaite the big build-up last week, and my word, did he deliver.
He absolutely delivered, James. I mean, 3 goals he got. All right, 1 was an own goal, but what a debut! He'll remember it I'm sure, for the rest of his life, for the right reasons. And yeah, he did. And like you said, James, these players, Brazilian teams often get these big name players in, and Grêmio seem to do it, don't they, quite often? I know I'm not putting Braithwaite in the same breath as Luis Suarez in terms of quality, but it's still a big name player, like you said, for the, no disrespect, obviously, to the Brasileirão, but, this man's played Champions League football a mundo, hasn't he? You know what I mean, with Barcelona and things, and he's got Premier League experience and everything. It's a big signing, and he's come up really, really good on his first game. 2 goals in the right net, 1 in the wrong net. I'm sure the fans are already singing his name.
I'm sure they are. Yeah, I mean, it's the prospect of a really good attack, like we spoke about last week with Diego Costa. I think Costa's actually just got injured again, possibly. So I think he's going to be missing, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, it's a dream debut for Braithwaite. I mean, just that quality, maybe just told, he's not obviously been away from European football particularly long. We know he was in the second division in Spain last year, which obviously isn't a hugely high standard, but he's not long off his time at Barcelona. And yeah, it's just a breath of fresh air to have a player come in and just look like he's fully committed to it. He spoke about when he joined about how he's always been a huge fan of Brazilian football. His father urged him to play like Brazilians and this kind of thing. So he's obviously really happy to be there, really wants to get stuck in. And we're going to talk about one of his goals in particular a bit later on because it was a brilliant goal. But again, like you said, he picked himself. He could have got in his own head. He could have got down about that own goal, even though it just hit him and went in. But he didn't. He picked himself up and he got two really, really good finishes.
Yeah, it was lovely finishes, wasn't it? Like we said, we're going to touch on it later on, but it was a nice, I think first time finish, wasn't it? And the other one, he didn't give it up. I think the goalkeeper saved a couple, maybe at least one. I think he headed it, the goalie saved it, and then he just blasted it in. And you're thinking, that's the sort of poacher that they need. Grêmio need a goal scorer like that. Like I said, Diego Costa can't seem to keep fit. If he was, Braithwaite and Costa would be quite, like I said last week, in some realms it might be a Premier League forward line that. So they're lucky to have him on the team if he continues to perform like his debut. Fantastic stuff. He's 33 now, James. So, but he shows he's not there just to get injured and pick up his pay. He's wanting to drag them out of the poor position they're in. I know they've been on good form, but if he can continue to score goals like that, then the only way is up for him and Grêmio.
Yeah, Renato Gaucho after the game was happy with his performance. He said that he's got a bit of a headache now. I think he was possibly speaking before Costa might have had a little niggle again, but he said he's got a good headache. Good problem to have with these forwards in form and scoring goals. So yeah, Braithwaite, well done to him, and we like to see it. Hopefully he can continue. And as you say, George, he could be a bit of a difference maker in turning their fortunes around. Although, as you said, they are in fantastic form. They've won 4 out of the last 5. Not long ago at all, they were really mired in relegation trouble, and they have picked themselves up, and now they're up in 13th, I think, in the table. So they're not well clear of it yet. Let's be clear. There's 3 points between them and Corinthians who are in 17th. But the form that they're in, Braithwaite in good nick. They look like they're looking up rather than down, don't they?
Yeah, no. For sure, James. Like you said, they're in real form. They're only 3 points away from Corinthians. They've got 2 games hand on them. So yeah, I think they'll be fine. They've reaping the rewards now of sticking with Renato Gaucho, I think. And let's not kid ourselves. They did finish second last season, so it's a really poor season, but if they can salvage something from it, whether that be the Sudamericana for next season, they're going to probably be quite happy with that. So fair play to them, just keep going. I know there's it just rolls on, doesn't it? They've got a Libertadores game with Fluminense tomorrow as of recording. So massive game, like Palmeiras, got a Brazilian opponent as well. So huge one, that.
Yeah, that is a massive one. And it's still, even with Grêmio's good form, Flu's good form, it must be said, although they did lose against Vasco this week, to halt their run back to, some kind of position of respectability. It's kind of still a relegation, 6 points of that which is a bit mad, really, but it's a Copa Libertadores last 16 tie as well. And that'll be, again, like it was for Flu last year, it's something to hang your hat on that. And whoever wins that will start to feel like they can go all the way in that competition, you would think. So Grêmio, I would fancy for that going into that game, but, we'll see how Flu, obviously, they won't want to lose their tag as title holders. too easily. But Braithwaite wasn't the only one in form, although congrats to him. He is our player of the round winner at the first attempt. But they've also got young players doing well, Grêmio. It's important to kind of mention, George. Again, another player who turned up big for them on the day, who isn't the young player of the round winner, despite getting his goal, was Gustavo Gomes and Gustavinho, who we've mentioned quite a bit on the pod. He's been ticking along as a bit of a prospect, only 18 still. He got another goal here, and he's one to keep an eye on still, isn't he?
Oh, definitely, James. He keeps getting goals, and I don't think we've given him the young player just yet. So, but there just seems to be, like this week, so many contenders. And I think, again, the goals that he scored, I think he's got 3 now this season. They've all been kind of tap-ins, a bit like Elias, really, at Fluminense, where he's just in and time. So he's doing well, and long may it continue. Maybe we have to give him an award at some point soon.
Yeah, perhaps we will. He's not the only one at Grêmio, though, who'll be fighting for an award. Jose Guilherme, a young man, a 19-year-old midfielder who came on and played the second half. They've also got Gustavo Martins, who has won an award, who's also 22 now, actually, isn't he? But he got the full 90 as well. And also Miguel Monsalve, our man from last week, George. We're going to touch on him a little bit more in depth because he had another wonderful moment in him as well. So, yeah, going well for Grêmio. We haven't even mentioned the result of the game, I don't think, actually, George. They did win 3-1 in this game, and they were playing Cuiaba. So on Cuiaba, George, 5 losses in a row now in all competitions. The manager, Petit, I think, is under a little bit of pressure now. He's not happy with the home form, especially. Things have just gone a little bit wrong for them, haven't they?
They've reverted back, James, to how they were at the start of the season. They got rid of the manager. They brought Petit, and it started really well. They started to pick up. Now it's gone bad again, and you know what I mean. And we predicted them both. I think we did to go down. I'm not budging on that. I think they will. It's just something's gone wrong, really, James. There, and you wonder how long Petit's got left. To be honest, they sold Davison, didn't they, recently to Garlow. I think they haven't got much more in terms of attacking options. I know there's our boy Pitter there, but I think he's kind of the only one really that is of any note. So they're struggling. Again, they're out the Sudamericana now, so just focus on the league now up until the end of the season. So just fully focus. It's probably one a week really now, up until the end of the season. So focus each week on that game and nothing else, and that might do them well. But for me, Petit hasn't got long left.
No, you'd have to think so. But like you said, 1 a week might just be what they need to settle down and get themselves out of that trouble. But somebody has to go down and lose.
Well, they do, James, and also they've got Garlow and Palmeiras in the next 2. So they're big ones, really, and difficult games. So like you said, every season, as is with every league around the world, there's at least 3 teams that get relegated. I think off most divisions, 4 teams get relegated from the Brasileirão every single year. So somebody's got to go.
Yeah, they do, and we're back in Cuiaba to be that team. But sticking with this game, actually, George, let's look into the goal of the round, because again, just like last week, really, there weren't too many contenders. There were a couple of decent hits. I know Helinho, who we mentioned a few times early on in the season, has been quietly ticking along again. He got quite a nice finish, and there were a couple more which were well worked. Goals, quite a lot of headers again, actually, which seems to be a bit of a theme of the division. But the goal of the round, we're going to stick with Braithwaite, aren't we? So he's actually going to be a double award winner in his first week in the Brasileirão, which, you can't say fairer than that, can you? But George, the goal was really, it shouldn't be Braithwaite's really award this. It should be the man, like I said, who we gave the young player of the round last week, Miguel Monsalve. I know he caught your eye last week, and I'd happen to say, maybe he caught it even more this week.
Well, he did, but he was actually the player of the round, James. We gave him, not
Oh,
the
of course he
young player.
was. Yeah, he was. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
we
Yeah,
actually gave him the player of the round, so he was in with the big boys
he was. Yeah.
last week, in with the big table. And he did so well in this. Like you said, it wasn't really Braithwaite's award, even though he finishes it off nicely. It was great play, in and out, beat a couple of men on the left wing, and flashed the ball into the box, and there was Braithwaite to finish it off. It was wonderful, and he's, again, it's only his second game. He started the game again. It's his first start. So he started the last one, didn't he? But another start, another goal involvement, and it was really well played. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's got 2 starts, 1 goal, 1 assist, and it is a brilliant assist. He's only 20, a Colombian, and you have to say he's got a big future. It wasn't just sometimes you see players beat men and it's a case of just pace, and this was the absolute opposite of that. He had to weave in between them, had to pick out the man at the end of it, and Braithwaite slotted it really nicely. So, yeah, certainly one who's caught our eye in his first couple of games in Brazil, and one that I'm sure we'll be hearing a little bit more about in the future. So yeah, well done to Miguel Monsalve, and well done to Martin Braithwaite again for scooping up a double award in his first time in Brazil. So it was all in that game really, George. There were other games that we should touch on besides though, and I think as we go into the young player of the round, there's a little bit more to touch on as well. So we've already mentioned there, 3 young players really who kind of caught our eye this week. There was 2 more who I want to talk about in particular, George, and they were both in the game in Porto Alegre between Inter and Atletico Paranaense. So Atletico were wearing your favourite strip again, that gold one. So I know you'll have been interested in that right from the get-go. But yeah, there were two young players here who were really, really on form. As you mentioned earlier in the show, a 16-year-old Gabriel Carvalho, who's actually turning 17 on Saturday. So happy birthday to him. I hope he enjoys himself. But he's still 16 for now, and he grabbed himself an assist, didn't he, George?
Yeah, he did. He did, James. I mean, fantastic. You know what I mean? Fantastic stuff. You just think 16. What were you doing at 16, James? I know, like you said, 17 on Saturday, but yeah, I mean, he's playing in the Brazilian round. Like I said, we touched on him at the top. 4 matches. It's not even his first game. Starting the game, fantastic, really. And it was Wesley's goal, wasn't it? He set up, I think.
Yeah, the first one.
It was. Yeah, it was nice. It was nice. Nice little slot through, wasn't it? Nice finish from Wesley underneath the goalkeeper. Yeah, you've got to say, fair play to him. I mean, he isn't the young player. I thought maybe he might get it, but I think the young player is definitely your man this time. Yeah, fabulous. And let's see how he goes. One for you, James, of course, one of your lads.
Yeah. For Inter, I mean, Inter again have been really struggling, as we well know. Mercado still hasn't been able to get a win for them. They haven't won since June, so it's I think 50 odd days without a win. But they're not in terrible form. It's three draws in a row. This was a right on the end, last second equaliser from Vanderson. Got them a point where maybe they didn't deserve one, but they are really struggling. And in times that teams are struggling, we often see them look to the youth teams, look to the young players to give them a bit of a boost. And that's what Mercado has seemingly done with Carvalho. He started the last 3 games, actually. So he seems to be one who he's liked the look of in training and promoted up to the first team and given him a try. It's not easy to play central midfield as such a young player, as we know, in any level, really. But yeah, it was a lovely little through ball for Wesley, nicely disguised, nice bit of disguise on the pass. And I'm sure he's one that we'll keep watching as the weeks go on. It looks like he'll stay in the team as they look to right that form round. But yeah, as you say, he wasn't the only young player who made an impact. And I thought we should give the young player of the round this week to Paranense's João Cruz. And the reason for that being that, he played the whole game. Again, he's another young player, 18-year-old as a central midfielder. not easy to come into a team as such a young player. I think he's only played 6 or 7 times for Paranense, so he is very, very inexperienced himself, and obviously has done enough to be starting big games for them. And he got a goal. It was an equalising goal, I think, for their first of the game. Well taken, arriving late on the edge of the area as a la Frank Lampard, getting in there with the run of the ball and finishing it off. Took a little deflection on its way in, but it was, he was in the right area, took it nice and calm. And yeah, I thought that he kind of deserved it for his goal. I mean, Carvalho's a couple of years younger than him. Obviously, Gustavo Gomez and Luigi, I thought was perhaps one who might have been the closest, really getting such a big goal in such a big game. But I just thought, João Cruz as a central midfielder, running the show and getting his goal, playing the whole game, I thought he deserved it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, James, a couple of young lads, excuse me, for both sides, excuse me, in, running the show in the middle of the park, and that's fabulous to see. Like you said, it was a nice goal. It did take a little nick off the defender, didn't it? But ultimately, again, these young boys are getting in amongst the goals, assists, enjoying that, which is the best way to do it. And, it just has to be said, international, sorry, James, it's just becoming draw specialists. I don't think Mercado has a win yet, does he, under his belt? I know they're playing on Wednesday. It's a rearranged game, the derby with Juventude. But they just keep drawing. That's 4 draws in a row. And you've got to say something needs to change really for them. Mercado obviously needs to be given a bit more time, obviously, but yeah, fantastic to see, and well done to Cruz. You got the goal. Paranense as well, struggling slightly to find any kind of real form in the league. So yeah, it's good to see these young lads doing well.
Yeah, Paranense are just one of those who can't seem to get rhythm. They're not doing terribly under Verini, but they just can't seem to put a couple of wins together, really. But yeah, they're doing all right. They're kind of stuttering along. This would have been a big win for them. They were winning, like I said, right up until the 96th minute, and Vanderson got his equaliser for Inter. But yeah, well done to João Cruz and well done to Carvalho as well. But Cruz is our man this week. Just a couple of other results I wanted to touch on, George, just before we do look at next week. We haven't touched on as many as we usually might do there. So I think Fortaleza, again, are worth mentioning just because it looked like a kind of a kind game for them against Cuiaba, but they had to do the business and they've done that. And they are up to second. Voivoda, after last week, was playing down talk of them being involved in a title race. That's going to be harder and harder for him to do, isn't it, as the weeks go on?
Yeah, look, James, I mean, like we said at the top, these teams above them, now only Botafogo are above them into second. These teams are faltering all the time, and they're now, Fortaleza, I think it's something like 8 unbeaten. I think they've won 7 of those. So, I think they've won 7 out of 8 games. The other one they drew. So it's incredible run of form. And like you said, Pablo Voivoda, he can't ignore the questions that are being put to him. We're now over halfway through the season and the second in the league, and it's quite incredible. 10th last season. They haven't finished in the top. Well, they finished in the top 4 2021. So not for a few years have they finished. In the higher positions of the table. So yeah, well done to them. They'll keep going. It was Vieira, wasn't it? Moises Vieira, who got the goal just after half time to win them the game against Cuiaba. Don't often score too many, James, but it's really doing them well at the moment.
Yeah, fantastic run of form, and we might touch on them again next week. Let's hope. Another team up there at the top who had a completely different week was Botafogo. They went out the cup, George, midweek against Bahia, and then they got a really poor result, 3-2 loss against Juventude. They were 3-0 down in that as well, and they managed to claw a couple of goals back. But yeah, I mean, that's going to absolutely hurt them, their title chances, isn't it? Where they had a real opportunity to pull away with 2 of their biggest rivals in Flamengo and Palmeiras playing each other, but they didn't manage it. I mean, you've got to say fair play to Juventude and Chura, who has got them in really decent form as well, to be fair. They made it through in the Copa do Brasil, it's worth mentioning. They beat Fluminense over 2 legs. So two teams there in kind of different positions in terms of stature. But a big win for Juventude and a really big defeat for Botafogo.
Yeah, look, I mean, like you said, Botafogo, with the two teams playing each other and drawing, Flamengo and Palmeiras, they had a real chance to sort of put daylight between themselves and those guys, but they didn't manage it. 3-0 down, James, they were, like you said, and Cuiabano got one back, and then Marcel, which was a nice goal, actually. That one, I enjoyed that one. But they have this odd result in them. You've got to remember, not too long ago, James, they got beat 3-0 by Cruzeiro. So after going on a decent run of form. So, yeah, they have the odd result in them, which might obviously see to them winning the title, prevent them, should I say, winning the title. Otherwise, Jorge is doing a really good job. But you've got to say, like you said, Juventude, yeah, really, really good, James. Sitting in mid-table, they're a bit unfortunate for me not to be a bit higher up in the table, to be honest. But they're chugging along really, really nicely. They'll be quite happy with that, 4 points above the relegation zone, 2 games in hand on Corinthians in the last relegation place currently. So, yeah, bring it on the rest of the season. He's got them playing really well as Ventura.
He does, and like I say, in with a shot at silverware potentially as well now with the Copa do Brasil. Last side I wanted to mention was Bahia, and they've been on a dreadful run of form recently. Obviously, they had a massive game, the Bavi derby, on the weekend as well. They managed to come out of that with a 2-0 win over Vitória, who were just hovering above the relegation zone. So important for them to get back to winning ways this weekend. And another team who must be said who were through in the cup, they obviously beat Botafogo. So maybe fortune's just hopefully turning around again for them.
Yeah, potentially, James. Like you said, Bahia before this game were in horrendous form, and it's worth noting Everton Ribeiro, who's a well-travelled player in Brazil and a former Flamengo player. He got his first goal for Bahia after joining them at the start of the season. Really important win for Roger Ceni. We haven't seemed to mention them a lot. We mentioned them quite a lot at the start of the season. Not mentioned them for some time, and in particular his substitutes, which are falling on deaf ears again, really. But I was happy that they won again and get themselves. They're not that far away, from fourth position still. Only 3 points behind Palmeiras. So they're still in with a shout, if they can just pull themselves up a little bit, and get themselves going a bit. Because they have been on really, really, really bad form before that cup win over Botafogo, which was impressive as well.
Yeah, I think if that's their poor run now over, then you'd have to say they'd be happy with that. They'll take that for sure. So yeah, that was the week that was, George. A kind of an interesting week again, and some big stars hitting the ground running. Shall we have a look and see what's to come in the next kind of week or so? Do you want to run through the fixtures? I know there's a midweek one with Inter against Juventude, obviously a big derby, a big-ish derby in Rio Grande do Sul. What else is going on? So that's on Wednesday evening, isn't it? What's going on aside from that?
Well, I'll tell you, James, in a second. So, like you said, there's the odd catch-up game for Inter against Juventude on Wednesday, the 14th of August, into Saturday, the 17th. Then, 8 p.m. kickoff is Galo against Cuiaba. Grêmio face Bahia at 10:30 English time. Also at 10:30 English time is RB Bragantino against Fortaleza. Into Sunday, 1 a.m. English time, Fluminense hosts Corinthians. 8 p.m. Atletico Paranaense Juventude. GO faced Inter. Also at 8 p.m. is Criciúma against Vasco. Palmeiras against Sao Paulo. And then Botafogo host Flamengo at 10:30. English time. And the match day concludes, James. Actually, it doesn't. That is concluding the match day with Botafogo against Flamengo. I did see there was Vitória against Cruzeiro, but it has been postponed on Tuesday, midnight UK time. It's been postponed, so I don't know what's gone on there. But yeah, so they're not playing. They're the only teams playing. There's only 9 games to look up on next week.
Yeah, I'm not sure as well why that is, but yeah, that's only 9 games. So, George, what are you going to pick for as your game of the week? Between there's a couple of big games there. Obviously, a Sao Paulo derby between Palmeiras and Sao Paulo. There's another Rio derby with Botafogo and Flamengo, which looks an especially big game at the top of the table. But have you gone another way? What have you picked and why?
You know what, James? I hadn't actually really looked too tough at the fixtures. Actually, and I'm kind of just looking at them now a little bit, and there are some really interesting ones. You know, Palmeiras against Sao Paulo, like you said, Sao Paulo derby. There's a Rio derby, which will be very, very interesting as well. But I'm going to go with Fluminense against Corinthians, James. And I think because it's, tight at the bottom and, we look at the bottom, we look at the top, they're the sort of action areas that we kind of gravitate to, obviously. And this is a huge game, Corinthians in 17th, Fluminense in 18th. A win would take Fluminense out of the relegation zone. So, and a win for Corinthians would do the same, you would have thought. So, yeah, I'm looking at that one, I think, James, and I'm interested to know what you're going to pick.
Well, you'll be unsurprised to know that was my first pick as well. So I think that's another 3 out of 4 or 3 out of 5 where you've gone. But I did anticipate that you might do that as well because I looked at those 2 big games, the big derbies, and I thought, yeah, we've just covered Palmeiras, we've just covered Flamengo. I thought you might choose a different one, and that's a good one. I think it's a big game. If anybody can get a win there, they'll pull a little bit away. So I did have a backup, thankfully, and my backup is going to be Atletico Paranense against Juventude. I feel the 2 sides that we haven't really covered too much on recently. Obviously, Paranense, we had a bit of a word on there with João Cruz and the draw they had with Inter, but I feel like we can shine a bit of a spotlight on them. And obviously, Juventude, like we say, are in decent form, and Jair Ventura has got them going nicely. So I think that'll be a decent game, and that's the one that I'm going to pick. And obviously, we'll probably touch on the big Sao Paulo derby and the big Rio derby, but I'm sure that there's plenty of people covering those. So yeah, there'll be 2 games which might be slightly less attractive to some listeners, but I think we can, hopefully there won't be another 0-0 or something, George, and we'll get some good action to look at.
Well, yeah, usually one of them is 0-0, isn't it, James? And the other one might be a draw, 1-1 or whatever. So hopefully, we get a couple of good games to look at. And like you said, as we always do, we won't just touch on them 2 games, those 4 teams. We, as listeners well know, if you've been listening for a while now, we do like to cover as many games as we can in some depth, in some way. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll touch on those 2 massive games as well.
I'm sure we will. So that's it, George. That's another week wrapped up. Some good games and some good moments, some young players breaking through, some new ones. Just before we go, I'd like to ask you to let the listeners know what the table looks like, because we've obviously been going through lots of ramifications. What does it look like at the moment?
Well, before I do, James, run through that, I will say to you, Feliz Aniversario para Quarta-feira.
Wow. Well, what does that mean? I mean, I think I know what that means, but I'm no Portuguese expert. So what does that mean then?
Feliz Aniversario para Quarta-feira. It means happy birthday for Wednesday.
Whoa, there you go. And I'll hit that right back to you. Feliz Aniversario for whatever it was. Feliz Navidad para miércoles. We'll say it in Spanish instead, just for the Spanish listeners.
Controversial, but I think it's a good one, that.
Yeah, well done. Well, yeah, like you say, happy birthday, George. Me and George obviously share a birthday, and that is coming on Wednesday, the 14th of August. So, like you said before, George, Inter, my team, have got a big game against Juventude. So, I don't know if I'll be staying up late to watch that Wednesday evening, but we'll wait and see how the kind of the day
Well,
goes.
also Galo have a game as well. They play in the Libertadores, James. I don't know when that is actually, but it's sometime 1:30 a.m. in the morning. So yes, like you, if I'm awake, I don't think I'll be staying awake quite to watch that one. But
Well, that'll be
you
on
you
Tuesday
know,
night, won't it?
yeah, true. Yeah, it's Tuesday evening, so it'll kick the celebrations off early if they get a win. But there you go.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's it. And also a happy birthday to our man. Idrisso Pita as well, who of course shares a birthday with ourselves. So
he does, and he'll be turning, I think, 25 or so. He might be looking for that move to Europe at some stage. But yeah, George, happy birthday. I hope you have a good day, and let's see what happens. Like you said, if Gallo get the win, maybe you can have a sherry to celebrate. If they lose, you can have one anyway. So let's have a look at the table then, George, and let's see what we're looking at, the standings.
of course, James. So it's Botafogo at the top with 43 points. Second is Fortaleza on 42. Third, Flamengo on 41. Fourth, Palmeiras on 38. Fifth, Sao Paulo also on 38. Sixth is Cruzeiro on 36. Seventh is Bahia on 35. Eighth, Atletico Paranaense on 29. Also on 29 in ninth is Galo. 10th is Vasco on 27. Also on 27 in 11th is RB Bragantino. 12th is Juventude on 25. 13th is Grêmio on 24. Also on 24 in 14th is Criciúma. 15th is Inter on 22. 16th Vitória on 21. Into the relegation zone, James, 17th position, Corinthians on 21 also. In 18th is Flu on 20, 19th Cuiaba on 17, and again with another defeat, James, I'm not sure how many in a row, but it is GO on 12.
Yeah, I think they've lost 3 in a row, but they haven't won for a lot longer than that, Gio. It's not looking good for them, is it? Well, that's it, everybody. Thank you again for listening. Hopefully you've enjoyed wherever you're listening from. And enjoy the week of football ahead. Lots of Libertadores, lots of Sudamericana to get our teeth into. And we'll see you all next week.
Yeah, see you all next week, and uma boa adios.
What was that? What was that first bit?
It was Tena bomb.
We're breaking it down, bringing the passion from every town. Let the world be filled with love tonight. Sway to the beat, make you feel so right. Summer vibes, we're dancing in the heat. Go, go, go. Can't be beat up in Brazil, go spread love in